Perfect.
Good evening, YouTube and Oos. This is the 7th Coast Dojo here with West Coast Sensei and Sensei 7th. Brother West Coast, how you doing today, brother? Oos.
I'm doing good, brother. Oos to you as well, man. Oos to you as well. How was your week?
So far, so good. A lot of personal development things taking place, and it's a climb, slow climb, but a climb nonetheless. How about yourself?
I feel it, man. It was a good week for me. Had the turkey day this week, so blocked out a little bit of time for a Thanksgiving plate. Was able to enjoy a plate and kick back a little bit, relax. But aside from that, just working overtime, BFCM, Black Friday, Cyber Monday. It's some big things going on in the tech world, so they definitely got me burning the midnight oil on certain hours, man. But overall, I am good.
That's good. That's good. Normally I don't celebrate Thanksgiving anymore, but I do give thanks for the things that I am thankful for having, like my family, my fiance, seeing that we're working on building a family, and
No
more details on that in the near future. But
doubt. Stay tuned.
the interesting thing is I did have a personal stream or post Thanksgiving hangout over on the Seventh Project channel, giving a bit more background into my career path, what I do outside of YouTube. And the conversation it went on for about 4 hours or so. It's
Hmm.
it varied in topics. It's a part of my random stream series that I'm going to be doing over on the Seventh Project channel. But an interesting thing occurred, and I wanted to talk about that today. There was a comment that was placed, and I answered it, and then it hit me. Why don't I talk about it today in the dojo? So I'm going to be pulling pretty much the comment up on screen, both the comment and my replies to said comment. And I wanted to gauge your thoughts on the matter.
Okay. And this was a comment off of the post Thanksgiving stream, right?
That is correct.
All right. All right.
So I'm going to pull this up here. And I see we have 100 in the building. So I would like your thoughts too, to the gentleman out there. All right. So we're going to blow this up and really go in. So this was the post, Thanksgiving hangout stream, a part of my random stream series over on the Seventh Project channel. If you haven't subscribed already, make sure you subscribe to both the Seventh Coast Dojo and the Seventh Project to get a more in-depth look on what it is I'm doing personally. But shout outs to Jupiter Dev, who contributed with this comment here, stating that, this is during the discussion or afterwards, if you will. The problem that I have with the red pill is sometimes it can turn into a therapy session, which I understand. The truth is traumatic but liberating. But with the introduction with the black pill, which is a natural progression from the red pill and inevitable, is that it seems to lack consciousness and God's light. But when I use my emotional intelligence, I feel God's presence over which decisions or actions are right for me and hopefully others. If anyone can explain why the black pill feels this way, and maybe it just means that I need to combine the two, is it a possible application to life? Before I get into my response, what is your take on, I guess, this observation and or question, West Coast?
I'm still taking it in, to be honest. Looking at the gist of what he's asking about in his statement, because there's a lot, is how the black pill makes you feel in the sense of understanding the inevitable. Yeah, I'm still just trying to take it in because it's definitely a thought, and it's a thought to be dissected in regards to what the definition of black pill is, the definition of red pill, and said transition into being black pill, right? Um, on one hand, I have two thoughts. So on one hand, just delving into the assumption that one will inevitably go from what is defined as red pill into black pill is a bit of a fallacy. My understanding is, I mean, you figure out how deep you want to go in regards to your understanding, but it's not necessarily required. So you can be red pill and stay red pill and not go into the black side or the black pill tier. You just resonate on whatever station you find most conducive. It's only when you seek to expand your knowledge that you'll delve into said matters. So it sounds like he's conflicted in even wanting to delve into that mindset. It's an option to go that route, but you don't necessarily have to pursue it. So that's my first thought. With that, I hand it over to you.
Okay, I can accept that, that viewpoint, and I appreciate it, honestly. Diving into my response, because what made me tailor this response based on what he was saying was, or what stuck out to me was the lack of consciousness and God's light. And you'll see that reflected in my response. Essentially I responded to him, quote, with the red pill, end quote, I understand how it can be misinterpreted by onlookers during a discussion. And this tends to happen a lot where people just chuck it up to this person is complaining without really paying attention. They're listening to respond and not to understand. So I'll go in a little deeper when I say, but one must gauge the individual tone who is sharing their piece. In my experience, I'm no longer where I once was, and I have accepted it, right? That is the truth of the situation. Knowing that with the red pill, truth is synonymous with truth, and the acceptance of truth is synonymous with the black pill, right? Now, I chose to share my piece because I shared some of the trials and tribulations that I've gone through in my younger 20s, between 19 and 21, where I went through an assortment or a plethora of ordeals with women. And essentially, I just told my story, but I only told it in the hopes that other brothers, and I, reiterate that here in this response to his comment, that I chose to share my piece to provide a common ground for other brothers that may have a difficult time identifying the signs, as I have in my younger years. Now, with the black pill, when you refer to God's light and his presence coupled with your emotional intelligence, I perceive that as your highest self and or levels of consciousness. God is within us all. I'm sticking to calling him my brother. He is my brother. And as we are created in the image of God, right? Now, the black pill, quote unquote, does not lack consciousness. It requires the stretching or growth of consciousness. And I just ask that he receive this. He received this well. I even followed up with saying that I would appreciate his participation in the next random stream that I have on the Seventh Project channel. Or perhaps if he makes his way to the Dojo channel, we could have him on and have a discussion and, dive a little deeper into his thought process and really build or expound upon the idea between red, black pill, the transition betwixt the two, and understanding what it really entails. I think with automatically assuming that it lacks consciousness, when we know that the red pill is synonymous with truth and the black pill is supposed to be the acceptance of truth, that would entail that you have a level of consciousness to accept the truth and you're not creating a fallacy or fantasy in mind and replacing that with the known reality. Which
you bring up a good point. And I would ask this, right? Do you think that it's required that individuals transition from red pill to black pill in their journey, in their life's journey?
I think it's required if you're seeking growth, because it's the stretching of your consciousness that will lead you to it. So when he says it's inevitable, right? He who seeks shall find. So if you're seeking that growth or that stretching of consciousness, you will eventually arise to taking the said black pill. At least that's my method of thinking about it.
Yeah, and I think that this comment, so with that said, it actually makes sense. This comment makes sense. If I was to put myself in this brother's shoes from the perspective that he's coming from, as far as just the assumption that black pill, the assumption, if you already have an assumption on what um a particular subject or a particular state is without any experience behind it, there's already a level of ignorance built in you, but there's still a mixture of curiosity. So you've heard the tales, or you've heard of what is considered black pill, and when it comes to what you've heard, your observation has a limited scope because you haven't necessarily put yourself in that state in order to fully comprehend it. And to your point, Seventh, about black pill and this level of understanding being a stretch of consciousness, because all of the fundamental principles and the tenets that you learn when you are considered red pill and understanding truth only get added upon when you reach that space of black pill. And in my opinion, those who are aware of those who are aware of knowledge that they know what they don't know. They also have a built-in, I'll say, railing on, certain ideas or certain topics that you're not going to necessarily delve into because you may not be prepared for it, or you know that it's not conducive for what your outcome is, depending on what your makeup and background is. And so, with that understanding, it's in my mind that there are those who may want to seek the truth, but they understand that inherently that you will have to accept the truth in order to resolve it. Won't actually go out to get that next piece because inherently they know that they're not prepared for it. So, in lieu of that, you make these assumptions, or you have these hesitations and mindset towards what that thing that you don't know is. And it's clear, or at least that's what I'm discerning from this statement. That's what it sounds like this brother's mindset could possibly be in. I don't know
And
what you.
I would agree, but I will also say, again, right? There's levels to this ish, if you will, which brings me to the tagline of this stream, right? Introspection and reflection or self-reflection. And I'm going to bring this down for a moment to bring up another article. We love articles here in the Seven Coast Dojo and really breaking them down.
If you
So,
haven't already,
yep, I have it prepped and ready to go. So, just gonna go back up to the beginning, right? Here was an article by Nur Iyal. This was made last year, May 13th, 2019. It's even encapsulated as a minute read. This is coming from medium.com, going over behaviors and design. Here are 4 simple introspection steps that will boost self awareness. Now, I didn't want to go through the full length of the article. I'll leave that up to you, gentlemen, by putting that link in the chat, which I'll do now. So, in case you want to peruse and give it a quick read, here you go. Let me, just in case, throw that fair use up there for educational purposes. Bam, put that up. Little thing I picked up from Art Style TV. Big shout outs to him. Oos.
oops, oops.
Let's zoom in case, you know, we have those that are,
Visually impaired.
yes, correct. Now, what is self awareness, right? Or what is considered self reflection? So, by this article's standards, the American Psychological Association defines self awareness as, quote, self focused attention and or knowledge, end quote. It means paying attention to yourself. It's knowing what's going on in your life. It's knowing whether you're happy with what's happening in your world, right? And in parentheses, that's what Bill started with knowledge that his life wasn't living up to his expectations. What are your aspirations for your career, your family, your life? Question mark, right? Going a little deeper, self-awareness means understanding your personality. You also understand your values, your relationships, and your beliefs. Self-awareness includes understanding of how you process, your experiences. Do you like to reflect on what has happened each day, or do you avoid thinking about your feelings? Right? Gaining greater self awareness is a long term process and not an overnight achievement. You do it over time by creating a routine of self reflection and introspection, hence the tagline of our stream today, right? It's something that you'll do for the rest of your life. Now let's look at some of the benefits of which, right? Introspection and or self-awareness contains, right? We know that it is a lifelong thing to do. You know that we want to be better than we were yesterday. We are working to become champions of tomorrow, today, right? Oos to that. And when we look at introspection and what it is, essentially, it is the process of attempting to directly assess one's internal psychological processes, judgment, perceptions, or states. With self reflection, it involves the examination, contemplation, and analysis of one's thoughts, feelings, and actions. Now, here's one we did not mention, but it creates this trifecta effect, which is insight, right? Which is the clear and often sudden discernment. That's a word to remember. Pin that word, discernment, of a solution to a problem, right? It's the result of self-reflection and introspection. Now, to the brother's comment earlier on in the stream, when I, or at least the way I perceived his emotional intelligence coupled with God's light and or presence, I looked at that as a form of his higher self, higher levels of consciousness. And in order to reach or attain that level of consciousness, you need to do the following, right? Which is introspect, self-reflect, and produce new insight or acquire new insight. Which, in a sense, when you talk about the red pill and the black pill and any of the other pills, if you want to throw them in there into the admixture, the red pill is synonymous with the truth, seeking the truth. The black pill is essentially the acceptance of the truth. And this is where insight comes into play, where you start to use your discernment, right, to come to a solution to produce a better outcome after accepting said truth. You have instances where some people cannot accept the truth, where they would just be better if it was a lie, right? And as we know, the dream state is more associated with the blue pill, if you will, buying into the drinking the Kool-Aid is the saying I heard a lot growing up. When you're drinking the Kool-Aid, you're drinking that Hawaiian blue Kool-Aid. And I bet you it tastes really good at that time because you're not going through any pain. You're not going through any turmoil. Things look up. It's almost like a movie, right? A movie that you yourself is watching, but you don't know that there's so much things happening in the background. You're not paying attention to those. You're only paying attention to the snapshots where the moments are good, and you're missing a lot of the dominoes that are being hit, which will cause a chain reaction later on down the line. And sometimes we get caught up. And this is where the truth comes into play, which is that, I guess, that red pilling moment. And whether you choose to accept it or not would be that make or break case, right? Again, accepting the truth and using discernment by his comment, I would perceive that as black pill, right? Using his discernment and understanding that he's seeking a higher level of consciousness on how to deal with not just because he didn't go into a situation, but when reflecting on his comment and his stance about the black pill, he can examine it and question why he feels that way about the black pill. Why does he come? What brings him to that conclusion? You know, that is the correct answer. And he even sought to know if those two principles that he mentioned could be combined. And I reiterated in my comment that, you know, I perceive that the black pill doesn't necessarily lack consciousness, but requires the growth and stretching of it because it's the acceptance of truth and now you're using discernment.
And to add on to that, in that comment itself, it reminds me of Carl Jung's work in regards to integrating the shadow, which the prescription or solution to integrating one shadow requires exactly this: introspection and reflection. Essentially, your shadow self is that repressed side of you that, for whatever reason, whether it be societal impacts, personal, how you were developed impacts, shape your psyche and the way that you perceive things. And so, the way that society has been constructed now, in the layers that you have to peel back in order to gain a sense of understanding, um, have transformed in this way where, you're able to first understand that there's a system, and then you're able to see the truth, but then the next step being accepting the truth. The transition between the two paradigms of seeing the truth and then accepting it is the integration of one's shadow, because your shadow will project whatever conflict, whatever mindset, whatever idea or principle that you learned intuitively outward towards the world. And so that comment really is a riddle for himself. The problem and conundrum that he's facing is a riddle that his shadow is giving to himself in order to reach that higher state of plane, and really understanding what he's asking for. Because those who understand, quote unquote, black pill and how it operates wouldn't make the assumptions that this individual is making. And to Seven's point about, reaching to that higher states of consciousness, the fact that he provoked and asked the question informs that there's still that higher state of conscious that's pulling you, now that you've tapped into it and understanding how the world works, and it's calling after you, and now it's just a matter of you resolving that that transition or that bridge. And the solution is introspection and reflection. And so, in this case, the brother, in his understanding of God and consciousness, and what looking at life without any morality, being amoral, looks like, is the riddle that he has to resolve, and that he's been put, the task that has been placed in front of him. And whether or not he delves into it is a decision of his own, which goes back to my original point about, people will stay at whatever um, lane that they want to go to. I'm of the observation and opinion that everybody has their life's riddle, in a sense, making an analogy, that they want to beckon or chase after. It's a matter of whether or not you decide to indulge and go through that transformation or go through that process, in the matter of whether or not you'll go through said transformation, because it'll be a challenge. It's literally the eternal hero's journey, right? That beckoning call. What if Neo didn't chase the white rabbit, right? I'm pretty sure there'd be another form of white rabbit for him to chase, in regards to opportunity for him to improve himself. And I think that there is an instinctive drive within all of us, and we have, different ways of expressing it and trying to articulate it, be it through forms of spirituality or religion or whatever principle or tenet that you have. But at the core, we all have that chase, in a sense. And whether or not you decide to partake or participate in that process, which will inevitably lead you to something that that could be an improvement or closer to your higher self, um is up to you. It's up to the user, you know. But I mean, it's a different type of mindset when it comes to being in the throes of what you call black pill, let alone red pill. um Kind of want to build on this idea of introspection, right? um Brother Seven, do you think that everybody is do you believe that everybody has the ability to have introspection?
I do. But what I will say to that as well is that common sense isn't so common. So, though we may have the capacity to do so, it is the willingness to, the drive or willingness to partake in such a journey where some people would rather be onlookers because it's too much work and it's strenuous to have to think. It's strenuous to have to come to the truth and go through these steps. And going back to the emotional intelligence piece, right, which in turn you achieve that through introspection and self-reflection, and that is the insight, right? And they even label it here in the article, but for those who when you really think about it, it states here, and I agree with this, that introspection gives you the access to understanding yourself, while self-reflection lets you process what you learn. And insight, right, this is that last piece, that trifecta piece, are the answers that you come up with in which you can act upon, right? The article, and I highlighted that piece. It just had to highlight that. But in addition to that, insights also, again, coupled with self-awareness, makes it more likely you'll do as you say. You won't just you don't operate off of tongue in cheek alone, but there's a call to action always, right? And that self-awareness increases your ability to exercise control over your emotions, which is emotional intelligence, right? By reducing stress and anxiety and providing a greater sense of well-being. Through self-awareness, you become less likely to veer off track when difficult emotions surface. Again, emotional intelligence. This is when you're taking, because see, there's been a common misconception that emotions and emotional intelligence is the same thing, but you ask any scholar, they'll tell you that the two are very different. You know, the emotions are those feelings or that energy that starts to well up and manifest inside of you, which will then lead to eventually some thoughts and or actions that you may take. But with emotional intelligence, it's controlling that. It's wielding your essentially your emotions are like a sword, right? And with emotional intelligence, you gain the skill to using it effectively. You're not using it in a way that will hurt you, but instead you're using it to produce a better result and or more conducive outcomes in your life. So you won't and it's interesting because the article then jumps in and says, like, instead of doing something you'll later regret, you'll be better equipped to ride out your emotional thoughts. Right. And it even gets into a few of the methodology of the do's and don'ts. Bear with us, brothers, as we dive into this, but it is essential for the growth of one's consciousness and reaching higher levels of consciousness. It's key to not obsess over things in the past. I get that you can talk about it, as I have talked about some of my past, trials and tribulations. But again, it's understanding and accepting the truth of the matter. I am no longer 21. I'm no longer 19. Therefore, those situations and problems that I faced at 19 through 19 to 21 are long and gone. However, when I share those stories, I don't share them from a place of reliving those instances. Again, I shared those points to provide, again, a common ground for other brothers that may have had a hard time articulating exactly what they were going through. I have a theory, right? It seems to be proven true day by day that to some extent we face the same issues to a degree, or we experience some of the same trials, if you will, just at different intervals in our life. You know, what happened to me at 19 and 19 through 21 could happen to someone in their 40s and or 50s. And essentially that's what came up in the stream that I had on the Seventh Project channel. You know, it was pointed out that I kind of caught my fade early. And in the words of BGS Dead Set Anime, big oost to those elders, you know. So me essentially catching the fade early and talking about these things, you know, the mishaps that I've had with women and dealing with the gynocracy, but not knowing how to articulate or understand that this is something that's occurring by design. Here I am just thinking I have shitty luck, but no, it's by design. And understanding that I'm no longer at that place is a part of what gives me the tools to move forward and produce better outcomes and to ride out any feelings that or emotions that may surface. So now I'm not just, I just don't have a wild fire in my mind, i.e. the emotions, but now I have emotional intelligence. I'm carrying it on a torch and I'm using it to light the way, if that makes sense. And again, I apologize for any technical difficulties. I know that StreamYard sometimes bugs out where it may be Borgin when I'm really touching on some poignant points. So do bear with us, brothers.
Yeah, you was in the middle of transforming into your next form.
I was sounding like a robot, like an Autobot.
You said all the aura, you know what I'm saying, as you was powering up, hit the electrical magnetic field and it just bounced back. And so, you know, it gave the impression, you know, started a Borg on the mic. But yeah, you were definitely spitting over there.
No doubt, no doubt. Well, you know, we're a few minutes in. I see we got 500 in the building. We're gonna do a quick check-in. See, we have Camp Low in the building. Oos to brother Camp Low. I see we have our Charles. You know,
All right, Charles. Oosh.
Oos. You know, we have Ado A. Oos.
Oosh.
You know, and this is on a personal level, right? But now I wanted to share an example of what self-reflection, introspection, and insight looks like on a global scale, right? With a system, i.e., our government and some of the things that we're doing and operations that we're trying to set in place.
Mm-hmm.
Now, we got King Wage in the building. Oos.
Oosh. Yeah.
It's all right. You don't got to lay low in the cut.
It's all good.
We here, man. And again, what I'm about to share is another article and a video. So this is for educational purposes. We have Kareem Austin in the building. Good evening. Oos.
Oosh.
Let me beam him up there after I bring this up. There we go. Thank you, West Coast. Now, energy. As some of you know, I am a green building professional by trade outside of YouTube. So the conversation around energy and sustainability, I'm always willing to jump into and have renewable energy nonetheless. So let's think about one of the modes of ways that we've been using energy. We've been burning, you know, oils, natural gas, and it does have an impact on our planet. And there's been many research and studies conducted to show that this is something that's necessarily hurting us, but not helping us advance and evolve as a people, right? As a species. And so this brings us to this conversation today, right? So the insight, the introspective is the fuels that we're using are hurting the planet, right? The self-reflection is like, is there, why Why are we only using full fuels that hurt the planet? Is there no other alternative? We're asking questions now. And then this is insight, which allows us to act upon it, which you'll see in this video. So in this video here, what you're about to see is essentially using algae as a fuel source. And this is a little bit of an energy 101, the introductory level knowledge, and they kind of go into detail and explain here in the video. So without further ado, I hope that you brothers enjoy.
We all need fuel to get around, and as America takes steps to improve our energy security, homegrown fuel sources are more important than ever. The Energy Department is researching one of the fuel sources of the future found here in algae. Have a look at this algae farm. These large man-made ponds are called raceways, and they cultivate a new crop of algae every few weeks. You see, algae, or more correctly, microalgae, are very small aquatic organisms that convert sunlight into energy. Some of these algae store energy in the form of natural oils. Under the right conditions, algae can make a lot of oil that can be converted into biofuels. Algae could potentially produce up to 60 times more oil per acre than land-based plants. Extract that oil, and you have the raw materials to make fuel for cars, trucks, trains, and planes. In the future, anything that runs on gasoline and diesel could also use biofuel from algae. The oil is extracted by breaking down the cell structure of the algae. This can be done by using solvents or sound waves. After the oil is extracted, then it is further processed at an integrated biorefinery, or in the future, at a traditional oil refinery. Another great benefit of algae? Consider this. Like plants, algae needs carbon dioxide to grow, and that's good for the environment since it takes CO2 out of the atmosphere, making it a nearly carbon-neutral fuel source. There may even be opportunities to build algae farms next to power plants that use fossil fuels, actually using CO2 exhaust to feed algae ponds. There are over 100,000 different strains of algae. Some grow better in different climates, or in freshwater, saltwater, or even wastewater. So, scientists are testing different algae under many different conditions to find the best strains and develop the most efficient farming practices. While commercial production is still a ways off, algae holds great promise to become a reliable homegrown fuel source to reduce our nation's reliance on foreign oil.
All right. And we're back after such an educational video. West Coast, what are your thoughts?
I thought that this was very fascinating, especially given the climate that we're in, no pun intended, right? So looking for an alternative fuel source to most traditional sources is something that has been necessary. I mean, we were just accounting and discussing about how our weather has changed due to global warming and the fact that we don't have, at least on the West Coast, we didn't have a traditional fall. Like we jumped straight from summer, then we had what was it, the fires this year, and then that straight to wintertime type weather. All of these things that are contributing to our environment change are actions that us as a collective are putting into practice. And so, because we've become so dependent on said fuel source, um, and the trade-off being either that and financial gain or the destruction of our environment, which basically makes it useless for any of us, has been the ongoing debate, which in my opinion shouldn't even have been a debate. But bottom line being, this being a potential alternative definitely seems promising. particularly in the part of how algae handles CO2. The fact that, I mean, a big proponent about, or the big problem in trying to transition off of traditional fuel and going green is the amount of emissions that occur in trying to use the traditional fuel source. And so having algae actually counteract or interact with an element that is definitely a part of the pie in trying to restore our current environment to something that is still usable. So then, it sounds all cool to go to Mars and all of that stuff, and the alternatives if Earth doesn't become habitable. But the fact that we have something that can be implemented, or an alternative that directly tackles some of the problems that we're facing, and the byproduct of the source that we use definitely seems promising.
Correct. And to your point, there's a saying that I often live by, that the grass is only greener on the other side when you don't take care of your own lawn. So, and when you think about the introspection, self reflection, and the insight piece with this video, and even the use of algae plants being built next to, plants that have a high carbon footprint or emit high levels of CO2 into the atmosphere, sort of using that as a filter to offset the environmental burdens, that's a level of insight that's occurring in real time. The conversations being had was the introspective piece. It's what are we doing, right? What are we doing? We're burning fuels that aren't sustainable. We're burning fuels that are actually hurting the environment and will have long-term impacts and then essentially cut our lifespan short as a species, right? Why are we doing this? Is there no other alternative? This is the self-reflection piece happening. Let's do some studies on this and see if we can find another way. Okay. Why did we think that at this time this was a great fuel source? The use of crude oils, diesel, and other natural gas, all of these were good for the times, but it's not something that is forever. So how can we, and it's not necessarily safe. So how can we minimize the risk, but at the same time still supply that demand for the fuel source that we need? And putting their heads together, which produces insight, which is now acting upon their findings after they learn to cast aside their set judgments. Like, how people have brand loyalty, where you would buy let's say a shirt or a belt, let's say your family bought Louis Vuitton for generations, and now you come in with a Ferragamo belt and your family scolds you because it's just like, the tradition is Louis Vuitton. We always support Louis Vuitton. And you retort, well, with why only support Louis Vuitton when there's other belts and it gets the job done? That's that conversation in itself that's happening is, you see there that there's two parties. One is reflecting and really asking the question, or posing a question against the tradition, quote unquote, while the other is just like, no, that's just the way it is. There is no other way. See, there's a stagnation of consciousness and level of thinking.
And to add on to that, it further reinforces the requirement of those who have the ability to think black pill, because on one level you have the blue pill, which would be the community at large that has been using natural gas and other traditional fuel as a resource. Then you have those who are still in the blue, I'll call them purple, maybe reddish, who are businesses and you got industries that are built upon using this source as a form of compensation. And so you have them pushing back not for the sake of uh, the what's the most environmentally safe, but what's the most profitable, and being able to take into account those variables that are a part of the equation, and trying to balance both environmental challenges as well as cultural challenges, and acknowledging that both are required. And what I mean is, typically, especially for those who are more cattle based, and I don't say that in in a derogatory term, but those who are a part of the cohort who aren't making any decisions that are impacted by leaders' decisions on how they're going to be governed and interact, um, they're not gonna know what's the most their concern isn't going to necessarily be of an environmental level, because they've been socialized in a artificial construct. So they're not able to register the importance of um, making environmental changes, and being able to communicate the importance of that, and educate them, and putting into practice some type of method in which they can receive that and change their behavior, is one aspect. Then you have on the other side, the actual capitalists, those who are making a substantial amount of wealth off of said resource, and trying to, strip them away from it, because they are in a mind, although they may have some knowledge on the damage that they're doing environmentally, their main focus is to be profit driven. And they're only going to stop, is quit. Basically, they're going to stop until somebody stops them, essentially. It says like, no, this, we're going to put a halt to it, and then finding an alternative for them, because although they're profit driven, because not penalizing them because they're not environmentally friendly, or not because they're not thinking of it, but they actually serve a purpose in being profit driven and trying to get people onto a sustainable resource. um, Being black pill and being able to parse through different segments of people's opinions about what is right and what should be done, and looking at things for face value, helps the introspection, or the introspective process, when you face these types of challenges, and you're able to account for each variable that is a part of said equation, without letting your morals, or letting what you deem or what you feel is right get in the way of what the greater good to society may need. And so right now is the time to go green, just because our hand is forced in it, and having this as an alternative is definitely, it's an exciting prospect in my opinion. But yeah, man, I just wanted to add that to what you were saying, brother Seventh. I'm gonna pass it on to you.
And I agree. Now, notice that these two examples, or the three examples, to an extent that we have provided today, are completely different scales. They should not be looked at entirely the same, but they are similar in methodology to produce different results. Now, where did I get that video and information from? If you would like to read up about it, I got that from the Department of Energy. I will be putting the link inside of the chat right now. So it's the Energy 101 Algae to Fuel link here for your viewing pleasure. Now, it's healthy. It's often healthy to reflect, self-reflect, and introspect, right? And produce insight, but to not simply rely on your own knowledge all the time, because the mind can sometimes beget itself. Those who are inexperienced in doing so, and really calling a spade, especially when it comes to themselves, as opposed to thinking everything that you have in your mind is just awesome, even when it's not necessarily healthy or conducive for you, will make you beget yourself and put yourself into situations that will hurt you in the long run. And so sometimes you need to gauge the environment to understand your place in the environment. Like what is how do you affect it, so to speak? Right? What do I mean? Let's talk about the social circles that we have here, like in YouTube or in our personal lives. So, you have brothers, sisters, a mother, cousins, co-workers, and the concept of yourself is completely different to each individual you interact with. Like the seventh you guys hear speaking is a completely different seventh internally to my knowledge, right? And the only way to ascertain, engage what you perceive as Sensei Seventh is to have a conversation or discussion with you and hear your viewpoints or your vantage points. The same way I would have to, have a discussion with West Coast, right? What is and understanding the nuances that come into all that outside information to help you gain a better grip on your reality and how to control the environment around you. Because you cannot control other people, but you can control how you respond to them. And this is a step in your training to producing said insight and control. Right? And with that, we are close to the hour mark. And don't take my word for it. Let's put it to the test. Let's really put it into practice. We have 600 in the building, and we're going to open it up tonight. Have you brothers come on in and hear you guys' viewpoints on this matter.
Yes,
But first, before we open it up, I want to give a shout out, make sure that I'm keeping up with the times and the notifications I'm getting via the Cash App for the Dojo space. We would love to extend an oos and a perfect to the Gold Professor who's donated since yesterday.
Perfect.
So big oos and perfect to you, Gold Professor. And to Brother King Wage, oos.
Perfect.
We appreciate, your donations, and all contributions are appreciated and goes back into the dojo space and producing quality content for you brothers. And thus having a space like this where we can come together and look inward and grow and expound upon some of the new truths that we come across. There's some things that aren't even in our scope on the day to day. There's a lot of things that are occurring. Some of us worry about bills and family issues, and that's the full extent of our world. We don't really know much about sustainability or much about coding or tech, as West Coast knows. Some of us have our own personal careers. But with that, without further ado, we put that link in there, and we welcome any of the brothers to come on up and let's talk about it. What is your idea of introspection, self-reflection, and insight? And how have you applied it to your life? And what are some of the outcomes or results that you have gotten? And do you think other brothers can benefit from such training?
Are they all right? So let me ask you this.
Mm-hmm.
When it comes to the brothers, how many percentage wise do you think would be able to tackle that darkness and integrating that shadow to begin introspection? Out of 100, who percentage wise, how many brothers do you think can be able to, tap into that and begin that process of introspection.
It's hard to gauge how many can achieve it. But what I will say is that we all have the capacity to take the first step. It's hard for me to make a call based on someone else's, will or drive to seek truth, knowledge, and understanding and apply that knowledge and turn that into wisdom. It's the
Right.
application of knowledge, right? So we each have the capacity to reach that level, but I can't ascertain unless I'm studying. I have like a complete experiment, right, where I'm watching, or we set up a class to some extent, and we watch how people interact with each other and watch how they move. And it may be different because, again, us even having a conversation about it would put people on their toes. It would have to be something that's done where it's not to their knowledge, and they learn at the end the purpose of doing the things that we are requesting of them, and to see if they completely grasp the purpose of such an exercise, or exercises plural, after everything is said and done. Only then will I be able to actually give you a percentage out of, we have 700 in the building. So out of the 700, let's say we have all 7 participate, and 5 of those brothers do good. And the other 2, they're not getting it. Maybe they're not there yet. Maybe they may need some extra time. And that's all okay. We're not all equal, essentially, when it comes to going through it, because we have there's other factors that may affect our drive to succeed and or achieve higher levels of consciousness. Again, I don't want anyone to mistake what I'm saying. We all have the capacity to seek higher levels of knowledge and consciousness. However, when it comes to the application, putting boots to the ground and actually doing the work, understand that this is no easy task. However, once you do the work, you will be rewarded handsomely, because now you put yourself in a position to be able to alter and influence the environment around you as you know it. And there goes the notification. Again, I want to make sure I'm giving a big shout out to R. Charles Oos. Thank you for your contribution to the dojo this evening.
Perfect.
And he says for the Oos. So, of course. But again,
Yes, sir. Yeah, I was just thinking the fact that pairing introspection as a concept in relation to the black male experience over here in the United States, right? I think that all of us, to a certain degree, have a ready-made, like a pre-prepared level of trauma that comes with our life experience, just based off of the environment that we're in socially, and the potential to actually overcome and be able to self-reflect. I think that all the brothers definitely have the capacity for it. I think that one of the challenges is being able to identify when you're in the midst of your humanity, or in the midst of your mass training, in a sense. And what I mean is, when it comes to introspection, typically it's done in the form of post, or even pre, but more than likely post, right? An event occurs, after said event occurs, or whatever situation happens, um, you stop and you think and reflect on what has transpired. But the next level, at least in how I see it, is being able to have in a reinforcement or a ability to um an ability to come back and introspect in the midst of a particular situation. And what I mean is something that comes to mind for me, especially being ADOS, is the idea of, black men being disagreeable and at the point, um, coming to a conflict for something that can be resolvable in any other natural conditions. The Boondocks talked about it, calling it a nigga moment, right? But understanding that behavior or that trigger or dog whistle, something that you may not know pops up, but it just happens, being able to catch that in the midst of the moment because it's a habit at this point is something that may be a challenge for some brothers, especially when they get triggered in these discussions that have been happening amongst the sphere. And so I don't know. It was just my thoughts in regards to the idea of introspection and what that looks like for the brothers that actually got me on this little tangent. But I want to give our Charles. Let me give him a triple perfect. Give him a triple perfect.
Perfect. Perfect. Perfect.
One more time. Appreciate you supporting the dojo, and yeah, big salute to all of the individuals who have supported the dojo and it's come through not only with your thought, your mind powers, and your ears, but just your time, because that's probably the most important thing that you can spend currency on, especially nowadays. I don't know what you think. What you think about that, brother Seventh? The idea of time and its importance.
Time is very important. There will never be another November 29th, 2020. So it's happening now and today. However, what you do today can impact the next 10 years, the next two, right? And so on. And understanding that, and this is where we extend our appreciations to the 600 and those who contribute to the dojo space, the experience that we provide to you guys, and understanding that this show happens because of you, right? As you watch our show, there's an exchange of energy that is occurring where we put on display our knowledge or the extents of our knowledge, and you receive it and you reciprocate that knowledge through contributions or participation in the streams. And there's a level of love and appreciation that's happening, but that isn't, it's silent. This is an understanding that's occurring right now where when this happens, you come again next time. This lets me know the true worth and value of the streams that we initiate, West Coast and I. And it lets us know that our time is just as valuable to you guys as it is to us. And we want for ourselves, we want for our brothers what we want for ourselves. So if we extend this to you guys and you receive it well and you give us something to receive, just know that it's all love. And we do that by saying oos. We're in agreement to the reciprocation of positive energy and the growth of the brothers that enter the dojo, because that's the purpose of this space. It's to stretch and or grow our levels of consciousness and think about things we normally don't think about, and enable us and gives us the tools to master our environment. Again, we cannot control the next individual, right? We can't control some of the brothers that go in and out. We can't control how anyone receives it. We appreciate that it is well received, but we can control how we respond to them. And this is where we reach that emotional intelligence, right? Or that insight, which stops us from making decisions that we will later regret. Pardon me. Like, I don't know, let's create a scenario, shall we? Streamer A makes a stream and a few people come in and they have a colorful opinion and they lash out and they start yelling while the other participants on the panel are, just quiet, silent. And then after all the hoopla is finished, then they have a conversation about it and reflecting on what actually occurred. Again, you can only control how you respond to the situation at hand. You can't control no one else, essentially. And again, I apologize for the technical difficulties. It seems whenever I start making poignant points that Borg tends to happen. Work in progress. We've put the link out, so we would love to have more of a dialogue betwixt the 500 to 700 in the building, and not just between us. I know it is an interesting spectacle to hear the dialogue between us two brothers, but we would love to and would appreciate a conversation with our viewers, just to hear your thoughts on the matter. I'll place the link in the chat again if we might have lost it, just in case.
Yeah. When I was, just to add on to what you were saying though, as far as the example of streamer has an individual, hops on, lashes out, and people get quiet, and then the response to it is essentially getting to the root of the problem and acting instead of reacting emotionally to the incident that occurred or transpired. In the midst of doing all of that, for me, it, in reflection of the black male experience here, because systemically we've been oppressed, and the resources that are up for grabs for any citizen have been either suppressed or they have been a challenge to be able to allow black males to utilize said service, whether it be through the implicit miseducation and treatment of our development for the use of the prison, the pipeline, or the drug companies getting us on the ADHDs or any pharmaceuticals. The importance of self introspection is probably twice as crucial to us, because the level of support that we should be getting just on a basic citizen level has been diverted for whatever reason. And for brothers who have a platform or have a space where you're definitely having people, if you're catering towards brothers, hop onto your platform, you kind of got to expect that it's going to happen. And having that ability to introspect and being able to facilitate a panel discussion in a conducive, healthy way is of the utmost importance, because there's essentially no other place for brothers to go, and they want us to, by design, go at each other's throats, and it's so easy to do because of the conditioning that they've put us in. To have any type of solution moving forward, uh, it behooves you to one acknowledge that that's gonna be a presence, that's going to be a presence, or a factor that happens when anybody that you deal with in regards to um, topics and situations may hit you with. And so it's it's one of those things, like having to fend for yourself, and then being able to sit back and reflect on said experience, and having to essentially figure it out on your own comes with its own problems. But to break out of that cycle, or basically stop the generational curse, the proverbial generational curse, as some may put it, from contaminating the next spread, it almost requires you to adopt introspection, because there's no other way to move on in a constructive way without it, especially given our circumstance and our placement.
Correct. Now, I do say that it is a rather difficult task, especially for brothers in particular, right? Because society and or i.e., the environment, right? For now, as we address it, it rewards the downward spiral. The community, the state of the community currently rewards the downward spiral, or de-evolution, or insert any word to point towards going down, as opposed to growing or growth, or going beyond, if you will. Because it is labeled as such a hard thing to attain, not many people wish to grasp for it or even take the first step. That is clearly indicated in the miseducation of young boys, young black boys, as we went over in previous streams, showing that those numbers or statistics are ridiculous. And what can be done to embolden the number of educated black boys is remove them from an environment that doesn't reward or enable them to be distracted and or reward negative behaviors, or put them in positions of dire straits. And a lot of it starts at the home. So check this out. If how we interact in the outside world easily makes up the behaviors that we display or project, right? And it starts at home. If it starts at home and we have a messed up home situation, wouldn't you think that that will be reflected outward to the world to project that? But many people will be taken aback because that's not the common condition for people outside of our group, at least not widely known. It's not widely accepted. It's looked at as an abnormality, right? And it's becoming more common now because of the nuances, right? And the design to, again, promote this downward spiral. And now they're coining it alternative lifestyles, right? An alternative lifestyle didn't produce you. You were not born from an alternative lifestyle. You were born from a natural order of things, or natural progression. Yet you wish to live these alternative lifestyles, right? And think you will get the same results as if you want the natural course. And by definition, to do the same thing over and over and expect different results is insanity, is it not? Brother West Coast, you there?
Yeah, I'm still here, brother. For me, it's one of those. It's one of those riddles.
Do tell.
Well, I think that life has multiple riddles that you have to solve for, right? And some that you aren't even prepared to, deal with at a particular time. And I think that, being being a black male in America right now is definitely a interesting turn. It's an interesting experience to say the least, because so much constructive opportunities are laid bare in front of you, while at the same time you see the amount of trials and tribulations that not only lie ahead of you, but the ones that were in your past that you may not even have known you were affected by are being exposed systemically speaking. And so I think that, on that note, man, really allowing brothers to sit back and kind of ponder on that on their own may be the best move. I think that one piece of introspection, because it's good to have the discussion publicly, is the private introspection that happens once you turn off said broadcast. What is the voice that's in your head telling you in order to, you know, guide you in the most constructive way or constructive manner? Um, BGS has mentioned it as well, and talking about or bringing up the anima, which, by way of Carl Jung, and talking about the idea of um, this female counterpart that's in you that ties to your emotional intelligence, and whether or not you're listening to her or that voice, however it's personified, um, is the next goal. But I think that cultivation happens privately more than public, and I think that that's where we should leave the audience, in my opinion, brother. Um, but yeah, was there something else that you wanted to share?
Yes, sir. And I agree with you. That will be a conversation that can happen on the next one. And I want to send. I see that we have James Keels in the back. Unfortunately, we can't bring you up this stream, but we'll bring you up in the next conversation, brother, as we're currently closing out. So do stay tuned for the next time that we open up the dojo. But to the brothers that were watching, we have 800 in the building. I want you brothers to understand, if you haven't heard it anywhere else, you've heard it here first. We see you, brothers, and we are proud of you. Continue to seek higher levels of consciousness. Be careful and be safe. And with that, disciples, until next time, oos.
Oosh.